Hello, book lovers everywhere. Today we're going to be discussing one of the great unread books of the 21st century, which is Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. Very excited to be starting off our new season with a massive tome, a lot of weight. Alex, this is your book.
Hey, Robin.
How you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing well. And I kind of had a feeling you might choose that book today. I wasn't sure it was on my short list, but I just happened to have it here
Oh, man,
anyway.
it looks
Yeah.
good. I tell you what, it's a good looking cover. It is, I think, an iconic
Yeah.
cover.
Totally iconic, very, very simple typeface. Really pops. People recognize it. They know they've seen it somewhere. They've seen it on the bestseller lists for years and on the tables in their favorite bookstores.
It's a book that leaves no doubt at 20 feet. It is the title. You are reading Capital, and it is the one by Thomas Piketty. You make it smaller, you're like, oh no, is it Karl Marx?
Exactly.
No, no.
He was really wading into that sort of title confusion when he selected this one. But I think he must have done it knowingly, knowing that he's such a bright guy.
It is such an act of arrogance. It would be like if the only other thing I could think of is if he called it the wealthier of nations or the wealthiest of nations. That would be the only
Yeah.
other one I could think of. And then the only other thing I can think of is Knausgard, or however you pronounce his name,
Yeah.
picking My Struggle as a title. That's the only other one I can think of that has got
Yeah,
this.
I agree with you. The Nausgard title is pretty epic. But also was, at the top of the bestseller list. So I think there is some reward if you choose something that audacious.
This is it.
So we should keep that in mind for our own literary aspirations, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like if you do a rom-com book, you call it Sense and Sensibility and Alex.
But is that fan fiction or is that really an homage?
It's my fan fiction. I already wrote it. Thanks, man. It's coming to you.
Oh, okay.
Listen, let's just take stock of how we got here.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this book. How are we getting here in our journey of discovering what I think is one of the great under-discussed aspects of the beautiful reading life?
Robin and I have known each other for years. We've swapped notes about books that we've read and not read for years. And I think the more we discuss this phenomenon of acquiring books at a massive clip, but only reading a small ratio of them, we realize there's really something there. This is really kind of a piece with modern working life. We try to stay intellectually stimulated without having the time to do it. And so we have beautiful bookshelves and lots of bookmarks at about the 6 to 10% place of the book. And so here we are.
This is another fact, is that everyone knows this is happening and no one's discussing it. And it shouldn't be a source of shame. We want to come out. We want to be loud. We want to be proud. And we want to revel in what we actually think is a great and positive relationship with books and the intellectual life.
Indeed.
Because
It's always been happening. It's always been happening. Our parents did it. Our grandparents did it. I think we maybe just given, working schedules these days, maybe we're doing it at an even higher ratio, but it's been out there. Let's destigmatize the act of book acquisition and non-reading.
Listen, that is what we're going to do. And I'm so excited that we picked really one of the great unreads. Like I said, this is almost sort of a classic one. A few facts about it just to kick us off. You are not alone in buying this book, quite the opposite. Harvard University Press says this is their most sold book ever.
Incredible.
Now, they say it is the most best-selling economics book ever in the 21st century.
I believe it.
Doesn't quite make sense when you think that Freakonomics exists on our planet. And so that is true. Like Freakonomics, looked it up, it outsold it. But is Freakonomics economics?
It's a bit of a popular science book. I'm sure Piketty might not consider it a hardcore economics book.
Yeah, and that's something else, right? Like, I think actually one of the big differences is Freakonomics is designed to be finished on a plane ride.
Exactly.
On a beach. There's nothing about Capital that is indicating to you that this is going to be one you read in the sun.
Or anywhere for that matter.
It's an easier book to put down than to pick up, just on a bicep level, just on a pure bicep level.
Truly. Truly.
But it did sell, and it has been a book that people are discussing, whether they know it or not. And I feel like it has had one of the marks of a great unread book, which is that you feel like you should read it if you're of a certain kind of mind, because it's always been discussed. And if you have a certain kind of brain, like I think you have or we have, and you went to a good university, you always feel inadequate to discuss someone unless you've done the reading, unless you've done the seminar. And I feel like
100%.
this book fits that category massively.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was such a cultural phenomenon when it came out. We almost feel like we read it. Followed the financial crisis by a few years. It was obviously influenced by that timing, and was so influential because of the fact that it came on the footsteps, came on the heels of the financial crisis of 2008 and 9. So we kind of feel like we've read it, but very few of us actually have.
So, what prompted you to buy it? Let's go back to Alex. Let's take a journey back. Where did this begin? When did you first lock eyes on this book? What was going on in your mind?
So this is where the plot thickens, Robin, not of the book, but of the purchase of the book. I bought this version in 2021 in Amsterdam, and I've got the receipt to prove it. I always use the receipt as the bookmark. However, I'm pretty sure I bought a copy in 2017 while I was in grad school in the US, and this was probably the one I bought because I lost the first one.
And paint us a picture of grad school Alex. What's going on with him at that point?
Grad school Alex had just quit his big corporate job where he met Robin. I'll switch from the third person. Robin and I met when we worked at Google in Singapore. And so I put my corporate career behind me. I was going to work at an NGO and or go to grad school. And I found myself in grad school in a very academic program. And I was going to go whole hog into these topics that I'd only scratched the surface of, like economics as an undergrad. And so I was trying to go deep and actually figure out who these guys were, what they were all about. So I definitely bought Capital.
What else?
Or maybe rented it. Yeah.
What else were you buying? What else were you buying at the time? Maybe it'll help everyone to understand what you were actually studying and why was this a part of your goals at the time?
Yeah, I was in the Department of Near Eastern Studies, and at the time I was thinking of spending the next 6 to 8 years in a PhD program studying Central Asian history, and actually like the economics of feudalism in the 19th century Uzbek Khanates or something. So, I mean, it was going to require me to go into Marx and the folks who came before Marx, and definitely to read the updates on these theories in Picketty and others. So I was ready to look at economics while studying, the languages and history of Central Asia.
Alex, I guess the thing here is that it doesn't seem like a natural fit, right? Like, I guess you were doing feudal societies, but this seems like one part of academic study, but one part of kind of just personal growth on the side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it actually here I am working in another corporate job 10 years after entering grad school in 2016. And it points to the fact that I always kind of had one foot in this academic pursuit, kind of dipping my toes into it, more like it, but also keeping another foot in the 21st century because I probably knew subconsciously I'd end up in a job again. So I didn't want to completely dive into history and lose touch with the present.
So it was kind of a dream of you as the economist. You're going to build up the economist's muscles. You're going to go toe-to-toe with economists. This is the hot book. You're going to dive deep. You're going to know your equations. You are not going to be a humanities major anymore. You're going to go, actually, percentage this, percentage that. I know the theory. I know I can talk the talk, walk the walk.
Yeah, except I never expected to be a math or econ guy, full stop. I needed to know a little bit more about the fundamentals, and I'd taken a bunch of econ in undergrad, but math is not my thing. So I knew that would never be the case. But I also, I was also picturing a lot of very swanky grad school cocktail parties where being able to converse in the latest Picketty publications would be.
I mean, there is a kind of intellectual world where, the closest equivalent would be, I sort of feel like now you have to listen to the latest Taylor Swift album. You just have to. Because people are kind of appalled if you just don't know any of the songs, you haven't put it on Spotify, people just assume that you are deliberately out of touch, and you just
Yeah.
need to have a certain level of understanding, and maybe if to maintain status, be a little bit ahead of it. What do you remember now from this book? What did you actually read? Do you remember?
Well, it seems, well, if we can trust my bookmark, it seems I read more like 90 pages of this 783-page book. But I actually can recall, I had thought I read more like 12 or 13 pages. So I don't know if that's encouraging or discouraging,
And
given how
what's
little I
stuck in your head?
remember.
What do you remember? Tell us about the book. Closed book examination. What's it about?
Yeah. The book is about the rich getting richer while the rest of the economic actors toil away. They might do fine. They might do really fine, but they're never going to get close to those folks who have huge investments, which are just delivering a rate of return on capital that is greater than the rate of return on labor. And actually, it's quite intuitive.
Do you feel like you didn't know this before? Was any of this a revelation? Was any of this eye-popping to you when you were reading it?
No, if I can go back, to try and go back 10 years, I think what makes it powerful, again, following the financial crisis, I think, being based in the US at the time, folks were trying to turn the page and kind of forget what had just happened. And I think when Picketty brought data to the table, he said, we actually have evidence for this. It might have felt like something that's true, but now we can actually point to some database. And Robin, I think you can say whether that data is really instructive, but he really made it unassailable to argue that this phenomenon is real and we need to create tax policies that are fairer. So that to me was quite a powerful punch to land.
I mean, I think that is all you could want from a book like that in a certain sense, which is you just want to feel the weight of an argument or an intuition.
Exactly.
I mean, even if you just got to page 90, you probably walked away with the confidence of like, no, this guy has done the work.
It. That's exactly. I've kicked the tires, and I can really tell, given my expertise, that the data set that he acquired from some tax service in France is really fit for purpose.
And I guess in the end, if we're going to sort of look at sort of the reading experience here, there's one kind of thing where, you're going through a whole university course and you want a deep relationship with the book. The way you're describing it feels more to me like, hey, I'm doing a job interview for an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to actually see the full work. You're just kind of like, I want to have, I got my own personal questions, but I need to meet the person personally.
Absolutely.
I need to look across from them. I need to see what you're bringing. And then you're just sitting there going like, oh, holy shit. He seems to have statistics for everything. Oh, holy shit. I have this objection, but he's raising it right at the start. He's actually thought about this. Actually, this guy is way smarter than me, or whatever it was. What was your impression of him as a person?
I mean, just a titan of an academic.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just clearly had an army of research assistants at his disposal to pour through these, I'm sure, dry as hell tax records, I think, indicating that these folks had made a higher return on their capital than the average economic growth or wages were yielding. So he came across as a very kind of serious, I mean, he's French after all, academic who has the chops.
I mean, I think when you said French, there's something else I wanted to say, which is I feel like our age and our generation is lacking proper French intellectuals. Where are our Foucaults?
That's a good point.
Where are our Sartres? Where are our kind of cafe society, French onion accent? You need to have them in the intellectual life. And it's one of the things where France used to be a great industrial power. It used to be a great military power. And it used to produce 3 of these people a decade.
You're right.
It is just not producing them like they used to. And he is, the shoulders are all on him now.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I'm a huge fan of France. I'm actually going there in a few hours for the weekend. But I can't help but think that the sort of decline of the political stability of France, we've got, I think, 5 prime ministers in the last 4 years, the kind of stagnation of the French economy, but also, who's to say we always need so much growth, Robin? That's one of the questions I think Picketty might want us to ask.
I have to say, I watched a few interviews with him. And he is beyond French.
Mm,
He is just one of these people where the sentences are perfectly English, but it
mm.
sounds like he's speaking French. I think he gargles French onion soup before every interview. It is almost impossible to understand him, not because of his vocabulary, but because of his grammar, but just because he's Max.
I think that's fantastic. That's exactly what we would want of him as well. If he presented otherwise, it wouldn't really fit.
I mean, that's what you hope, right?
Yeah.
Especially because he's got a bit more socialist, and so you really want anyone who's talking about socialism, you want that French accent along with it.
Yeah.
So listen, I think that is great. And so I want to make it clear that I haven't read any more than Alex has,
Oh my
actually a little
God.
less.
Oh my God. I
But I've
was
been
so
reading,
convinced. I was so
but I've been,
convinced that you had.
and I just want to give everyone a little bit of context about it from outside. So first of all, how do you even pronounce his name? Right? His name looks kind of English because it's got the K and the T's in there. So I think I would say Picketty or Picketty. God knows how he says it. I think it's Picketty, right? So he is cursed with this out of the world name. He does a ton of research with a Spaniard called Emmanuel Saez in the 2000s, and they are heavily influenced by sort of two currents. One is there is this French school of history called the Annales School, and I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when I studied history at university, but also in England, and in English history, you would always refer to the Annales School as like the coldest, most severe, most theoretical
Mm-hmm.
French thing, where basically you look at a single village for 1,000 years to systematically figure out what happens over the slow course of time. You basically erase all the heroes from history.
Yeah.
You assume that prime ministers are serving history no more than a peasant. So even if it's not Marxist, there's a basic system that you look very hard at the facts on the ground.
Yep.
And then from there, you draw your very cold empirical conclusions as to what is actually happening, which I think is just hardcore punk. And I love it.
I love it too. You're thinking about the longue durée. You're not thinking about the small developments or even the individual actions.
The fact that longue durée, we even said is French, sounds so much better
Yeah.
than the long term.
The long term, it wouldn't quite stick, I don't think.
That's a business thing. The longue durée is centuries and systems.
Yeah.
So he begins to notice the other thing that is really important in economics at this time is that there has been a big post-war boom, and it has lasted for about 50 years. Communism has, of course, not worked out, or so people think. Capitalism just seems to be the biggest wealth generation that is possible. And surprise, surprise, agricultural workers and the middle class have never seen this much wealth accumulation in history.
Yep.
And people like Robert Solow are looking at their growth models, and they're basically coming to the conclusion that wealth just creates wealth. And the simplest formulation we have of this comes from JFK, which is the rising tide floats all boats.
We've heard it all before.
And so you have people like New Labour in the 90s where, and there'll be a footnote to this, there is a basic understanding that the Labour Party is incredibly hostile to wealthy people. And New Labour basically comes in and they say, you know what? We want the City of London to get richer so that the nation gets richer. And then we as the Labour Party will just be a little bit more mindful about how we distribute that tax wealth than the awful Tories. But the City of London is going to be the source of millionaires, billionaires. This minister called Peter Mandelson famously said, I'm incredibly relaxed about billionaires, which was shocking for
And
someone from a party
his
founded by
career
billionaires.
has gone quite well.
Well, I was about to say, if you want to see someone who has lived the Picketty trajectory as a perfect symbol, it is exactly him. Because for people who are not aware, it turned out that he was actually doing exactly what Picketty feared, which is that while as a minister, while advising 10 Downing Street, he was not only in the Epstein files, but basically robbing the British people of information about euro negotiations that were eminently useful to capital. He handed that information over to capital. Capital made a ton of money, and it benefited the British people nothing. And he has been one of the few people to be arrested as a result of the Epstein files.
Indeed.
And so if you want to look at a Picketty villain, that's it. But what is a Picketty villain? And what is he against, right?
Right.
So as you said, Alex, the impressive thing about this book is that he starts off by saying this is a work of history. And he doesn't start with the theory. He's pretty cool. He lays his cards on the table at the start and goes, listen, we've successfully avoided communism. We've successfully avoided state machinations. But there's kind of a new threat brewing. And we don't realize it because no one has really studied equality.
Mm-hmm.
No one has the data. And so he, 2003, was like, how do you even get the data about long-term equality? And they started looking through tax data, records, anything that was show you the wealth in a few countries, France, the UK, and they even looked through novels, him and Emmanuel Sainz. And starting in 2003, they began to notice that actually inequality and equality, there is a long-term trend line that no one had quite picked up.
Over the longue durée.
Over the longue durée. That's it. People were not paying attention to the longue durée. Skimming the opening, one of my favorite lines of his, because, he is calling his book Capital, and he goes, Karl Marx also studied great works of literature. He's sort of talking about previous economics and things like that. And he goes, now, of course, Karl Marx had not much data in front of him when he made his theories. But even that, he didn't study.
That's just insult to injury. No need.
Which I always love. And as now my favorite put down. And he goes, he picked his conclusions first and then went with his data. He looks through the data, and then in Capital, and prior to it, he begins to notice that in the end, the longue durée seems to have a kind of rising and falling quality, where there is a period where the wealthy are taking most of the ownership of a society, and it is very hard to live comfortably in that society. And then he notices that, yes, indeed, in the 20th century, the phenomenon changed where the share of wealth owned by the 1% declined massively.
Mm. Around what year do you think that was, Robin? Like in the middle?
Yes,
right. And I think that, by the way, that coincides with very high marginal tax rates in the U.S. and probably other places. Yeah.
Starting in the 80s, though, this trend is reversed. And, he begins to notice that, it seems that people who are owning most of the wealth seems to be owning more of the country, just more of what the country owns.
Yep.
And there is a funny thing about economics, which is that quite often it can seem like a very intimidating mathematical subject. But when you take these introductory economics classes, as I have, they'll basically be like, now here's a very important equation. And it'll be like the most easiest equation to understand. And then they'll just be like subtracting this from subtracting this. And then they'll be like, so we have G plus P plus something equals, V, which means that if you subtract from this, S equals I, which means savings equals investment. Insight. And you're like, man, this is pretty easy. And his version of this is that after all of this work, he sums up his entire theory with R greater than G. Do you remember what R is? Do you remember what G is?
Those are the only two things I think I do remember. The rate of growth of capital is greater than the rate of growth of the economy.
And so the conclusion of that is?
That you're basically getting these, compounded growth rates for your capital while the economy may be growing, but is growing at a lesser rate. And so the share of wealth accumulated by the 1%, all other things being equal, is going to keep growing.
And so that's it. And that is horrifying if you're on the right, or if you're a capitalist, or if you're a billionaire.
Or
it's not good news.
It's not good news if policymakers are going to do anything about it.
Exactly. But if you're a billionaire, you're like, that's the point.
Right.
That's my
Exactly. That's
portfolio.
that's why it's working so well.
And then, and so you have, one sort of very neat Picketty story is that he is able at one point, a little bit later, to say, well, look at Bill Gates.
Right.
For 15 years, he was a worker. For 15 years, he was just sitting on capital. Now, if you want to be a successful worker, you'll never beat Bill Gates.
No.
You'll never, through the efforts of your brow, ever achieve making more money than Bill Gates.
And I've had some finance people say to me, and maybe you have too, Robin, why are you toiling away in a job that I felt pretty good about? You're never going to get anywhere near us financiers. It's like, damn.
But then he leaves Microsoft and doesn't work. And he just sits on his capital. And his rate of return over the next 15 years is much higher.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly depressing, actually, when you think about it. It's phenomenally depressing because it means that just sitting on billions is more effective use of your time than creating Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no better way to sum up the argument than that.
And that's your heft, right? Okay, so let's take a tour through the afterlife of this book and the afterlife that you've read with it, right? Like, how has it been coming up for you ever since? So you read it in 2021, we're now in 2026. How's your relationship been with this book ever since?
We're a decade in, and I will say, I don't hear Piketty's name often anymore. I don't know about you, but, the notion of the 1% is obviously still with us as the accumulation of wealth has continued to accelerate. But I don't really hear the book mentioned super frequently anymore, I have to say.
It's just not. I feel like it's like the Avatar of books, like the most successful movie ever. We all go and see it, and then no one talks about it until the next one comes out.
That's a great comparison. And have you seen all of the follow-up Avatar films after the first 1 or 2 or 3?
I've seen 1 and 3, and I've seen half of 2. But I don't see the point of I don't see that. But the half of 2 is I watched it on a TV screen and I was like, man, this sucks. It's so dumb.
Yeah, there you go.
But you slap on the glasses and you're like, I don't care. This is an overwhelming experience.
Yeah. Well, and you have kids too, so you might be more inclined to seeing Avatar than me.
But it is honestly, it's not a bad analogy because I feel like Picketty is kind of like a James Cameron type, where he's like, I'm slamming this massive book down your throat. I'm going to do Capital.
Yeah.
800 pages. Boom. 10 years later, Capital is not enough. Let's take on ideology. Capital and ideology.
Right.
Boom. Let's not, like other than War and Peace, there's not much more to discuss when you've got a title like that. So he's basically doing it. So these books land, everyone gets knocked out by them. And then, like you say, it's almost like the culture just absorbs it.
Yeah.
And moves on. So listen, we've got to decide if you're gonna get back into this book. A few tastes of other people who've had a relationship with this book, other reactions.
Yep.
Other things. And let's also just focus on a few passages that you missed out on.
Great.
Just to give you a flavor of what might be ahead. Literally, this is me thumbing through what I thought might be interesting. And I thought it would be cool just to do some of the sort of chapters that just sort of leapt out to me. I love literature. I know you love literature. We love our books. So he really studies, you don't think of a hardcore economist being a fan of the works of Jane Austen. It's not a Venn diagram you find.
It's refreshing, though.
Yeah, so let's see him reading Jane Austen. 19th century novelists obviously did not use the same categories we do to describe the social structures of their time. But they depicted the same deep structures, those of a society in which a truly comfortable life required the possession of a large fortune. This was a well-defined and fairly numerous social group, a minority to be sure, but a large enough minority to define the structure of society and sustain a novelistic universe. Now, I love how he says that because I feel like that's like the MCU of wealth.
That's a little spurious there. I mean, it doesn't require a factual basis to sustain a novelistic universe, but I take his point.
But it was, I think the idea is that if it was just 10 people, it wouldn't be a very good thing, right?
Fair. Yeah.
And
That's
maybe
fair.
the Knights of the Round Table is just 12 characters. So you can't
All right.
sustain it from
Totally
there.
different. Yeah.
But this universe was totally out of reach for anyone content to practice a profession, no matter how well it paid. The best paid 1% of professions did not allow one to come anywhere near the standard living, nor did the best paid 0.1%.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of feel that is cool. And then just to skip ahead a little bit, let me just sort of go on to how he discusses Sense and Sensibility. We find precisely the same orders of magnitude on the other side of the channel. He's just been discussing French novelists. In Sense and Sensibility, the kernel of the plot, financial as well as psychological, is established in the first 10 pages in the appalling dialogue between John Dashwood and his wife Fanny. John has just inherited the vast Norland estate, which brings him £4,000 a year, more than 100 times the average income of the day. With 2,000, this is a quintessential example of a very large landed estate, the pinnacle of wealth in Jane Austen's novels. Colonel Brandon and his Delaford estate are well within the expectations of a great landowner. And then he skips ahead. Mrs. Jennings, who revels in the social gossip of the Devonshire countryside, likes to remind them of this woefully inadequate lifestyle that the wife is going to have, during the many balls, courtesy calls, and musical evenings that fill their days, and frequently bring them in contact with young and attractive suitors, who unfortunately do not always tarry. The smallness of your fortune may make him hang back.
Yikes.
As in Balzac's novels, so too in Jane Austen's, only a very modest life is possible with just 5 or 10 times the average income. Incomes close to or below the average £30 a year are not even mentioned, moreover. This one suspects is not much above the level of the servants, so there is no point in talking about it. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I really like how he uses, great novels as a potential source. I think, that many people doing academic research would not be inclined to go to fiction for something like that. But I do think you would get, lifestyle commentaries and social structure commentaries in the novels as well. Very good.
I think he's also a very good writer. I just think he is. I think he's very clear, but I think he really has a talent for showing you the consequences of each little fact.
Yeah.
And also returning to his main theme and always convincing you that emotionally people are really struggling with inequality.
Yeah. And it does. I mean, it's definitely, it always helps when a book, there's a bit of confirmation bias here, but where it's intuitively true to the experiences many people are having in the economy. So
the other thing is, this is a good book to dip into. So, I mean, we got categories later. I think this book should not be a 800-page tome. I think it should be released as lots of little 100-page things that you could just dip into and out of, and even like take to the shitter with you. I think this is a great 4-page read. At any one point, you're going to get 4 pages in, and you're going to discover something you didn't know.
Well, Robin, this is why I considered, even despite not having read Capital, I was thinking about buying at least one of his later books. I just felt like, it would be nice to have a 200-page book from him rather than an 800-page book.
Right? That would be a solution. Should we also just see what other people who read about it just reacted, just to see what has happened in the afterlife of this book? So, on the right, obviously, there are some clear objections that you could make. It is not nice for people who believe in the free market. His basic message is, unless we stop these mechanics from happening, unless we make a deliberate intervention, this is only going to get worse. So Tyler Cowen, by the way, who is for people who don't know, sort of libertarian economist, incredibly fertile mind, always knows more than you do on any given subject, weirdly affectless in the way he talks, but very passionate whenever it comes to libertarian topics or economics, very sarcastic when he wants to be, kind of a great writer, very lucid. So he wrote one of the first reviews of Capital for Foreign Affairs, and to your point, basically said, no one has done this level of research.
Right.
This is immortal.
Right.
And for the sequel, for Capital and Ideology, says exactly the same thing. 500 pages of this, no one can touch it. This is such useful information. But his conclusions are all wrong. And in a real Tyler Cowen way, if you disagree with him, it's because you're a lunatic ideologist, whereas he is just a cold,
just the
objective facts, just the facts man, which is ironic because that's how Picketty also pitches himself.
Indeed. Two strongly opinionated, brilliant folks. Makes sense that they may not have exactly the same views.
It's amazing that two different people who have exactly the same system of thinking are in violent disagreement with each other. I wonder how this is possible.
How is it possible?
That people who are so fact-centric, who just go where the facts lead them, somehow always end up in roughly the same place where they were before. It's really weird. So his basic criticisms are this. Number one, rich people do get poor.
Yep.
So capital might be growing, but the winners of this lottery are not always constant. Number two, he makes this amazing point that, yes, the late 19th century was the peak of inequality, began to moderate, in the early 20th century and really moderate after the Second World War. But let's not forget that enormous wealth actually provided lasting benefits, such as the foundations, which set up the Harvard University Press, which he is benefiting from, right? So billionaires are good in very lasting ways, in ways that their families don't benefit from. So there is a kind of argument there. And then finally, I like this kind of line. Picketty is sympathetically attached to a relatively low capital to income ratio. But the 19th century with its high capital to income ratios was in fact one of the most dynamic periods of European history. Stocks of wealth stimulated invention by liberating creators from the immediate demands of the marketplace and allowing them to explore their fancies, enriching generations to come. He also makes this point that Picketty fears billionaires more than he fears state control, which I think is always a bit unfair.
I agree. I do find his second points for some reason more sympathetic than his first. Yeah. It just seems a little too convenient to say, well, yeah, these wealthy folks have benefited society so much. It's that's basically the Bezos justification today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who is going to build a spaceship if not for me?
Yeah, and the spaceship which we clearly need, there's a specific reason why we must have it.
Exactly. I mean, that's it, right? I'm not doing this for me. Let's just be clear.
Let's be clear.
I'm not doing this because I enjoy it. And I think that's another great thing. Now, on the left, this book has basically, which we're very familiar with. We don't mention Picketty, but he's everywhere, right?
Totally.
We work in tech. Right now, California billionaires are freaking out about a tax that is basically designed by Emmanuel Saez, Piketty's stuff. And then you were mentioning as well in France.
Yeah, the Zuckman tax and the structure of these taxes are quite similar to one another. I'm sure I'm missing some of the details, but it's basically the idea of taxing unrealized capital gains, which is, a source of immense wealth over the long term for the wealthiest people. So
yeah,
all influenced by Picketty as well.
It's really disruptive to capitalists, and because it's really disruptive to capital. So that's it. Yeah. So he's kind of won. Let's wrap up. Can I share you Picketty's opinion?
Yeah.
On his book? Because
as
you said,
I'm sure he thinks everyone should read it, right?
So we've got Capital, the first one. We've got the sequel, Capital and Ideology, which is kind of like a classic Hollywood kind of sequel convention. Where it's kind of like, look who's talking to, we've got the two things. And then I'm always very suspicious of this. He has a short history of equality. Anytime a guy writes a book like that, I think it's the dumbed down version, or it's going to be even more complicated than the other one, which is the classic example is Martin Heidegger's Brief Introduction to Metaphysics, which is,
oh my God,
should be discounted as like false advertising to this. So whenever I see short history of equality, I'm like 200 pages, not worthy of my intellectual.
There's a very serious book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is very much not a book for beginners. Let me tell you firsthand.
By the end of it, you're like, can I get the beginners to the Zen Mind beginners?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a Buddhist joke there, which is really a good one, actually. Yeah.
Have you read it?
I've read a few pages of it. Maybe we could do that in a future episode.
To the list.
Yeah, it's an excellent intro.
Okay, so I'll just read to you what he thinks and his advice to people about whether they should pick up capital. There are several reasons why I consider my Brief History of Equality is the clearest expression of my thinking on the subject, and why I believe this is in many ways a better book than Capital in the 21st Century.
Hilarious.
And Capital and Ideology. First, it is much shorter. a little over 250 pages for My Brief History versus almost 2,000 pages for Capital in the 21st Century and Capital and Ideology taken together. Can I just applaud a writer who is selling the shortness of his book?
Yeah, as the reason for it being better. That's quite funny.
And he also says he includes more facts about more countries. He's got better ideas and is a more positive book about the solutions that he's done.
That's more compelling to me, the solution oriented. But of course, his first book wasn't intended to be a sort of a manual for policymakers. It was just supposed to be a history.
Do you think you might get irritated by the solutions?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I bet they're going to look a lot like the wealth taxes we see out in the real world. So I think we're probably already familiar with what he would propose.
I'll tell you another thing about this is that you look at the debates, and the debates about equality all seem to boil down to very strong opinions about Sweden.
Yeah.
So fun fact about Sweden that he raised, which I didn't know. Up until early 20th century, voting in Sweden was based on wealth. So the more money you had, the more votes you had.
Yikes. That's a bit problematic, it seems.
And so he points out that somehow Sweden went from that state to a state that is like the most equal. So he's like, so it's not inevitable. Sweden changed itself, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Tyler Cowens will also come at him by being like, you're misinterpreting Sweden. Like,
it's completely different.
Sweden's not even socialist. And, you know, if you do think it's socialist, what about this? So it seems like Swedes are going to be like having thermometers stuck up their equality butt for a long time to come.
The entire Nordic region, I think.
They've got a lot to answer for.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, let's wrap up.
Let's do it, Robin.
Okay, let's give it an award. Let's give it an award because I feel like we got to give these positive reading experiences, these unfinished books, some kind of award.
Oof,
what are you going to nominate the award for?
Do we have a finite list of kind of the awards we're considering?
You got unread Booker, unread
Yeah.
Nobel, unread Pulitzer, unread Remainder Table,
I think
unread
we got it.
secondhand table, great secondhand table, secondhand bookstore prize. What's it going to be?
I feel like this is just such an early episode in our long series to come. We don't want to necessarily give the best awards first, but maybe like
there's room for everyone. It could be all Nobels.
Okay, in that case, even then, yeah. Well, how about unread Hayek award or unread? We got to have an economics prize, like an.
You're right.
Unread Keynesian. Now let's give him the unread Keynesian.
Okay, as in like a defining name that defined an entire school
for the field. Nobody's going to beat him in the econ field. In our series of discussions, there's not.
So we're
going to
award him the eponym prize, the unread eponym prize. You name something. Your name is the name for it.
Or should we even call it the unread Picketty prize?
Okay, he's the inaugural winner. This is it.
I think
it's like when Michael Jackson had the Lifetime Achievement Award, and the first person who won it was Michael Jackson.
Exactly.
So that's it. So we got the Picketty Award. I love it. Okay, so on to the next thing. Where are you putting it in your shelf? / what scenario would this be a great book to be performatively reading?
I was thinking kind of the office lunchroom would be a great spot to bring it. First of all, nobody has a book in that lunchroom, so it would immediately be noticed as this guy's doing performative reading. Second of all, people would definitely think I was smart for reading a book of this size, not to mention the content. So I'm thinking just bring it around, put it in the lunch pail.
Okay, so I am one of your colleagues at your tech company. Well, hey, Alex, what are you reading? You're reading what? You're reading Picketty? It's kind of old. Why are you reading that?
We're celebrating the 10th year of the translation into English. That's why. Haven't you heard?
Why are you reading the first one as opposed to like a short history of equality?
Because you miss so many important details if you read the slimmed down version. And that's too policy focused. I want just the facts.
Okay, I'm sold. Where are you putting it on your shelf? Where's it going?
Well, it's got, I've got a pseudo-organizational approach here. A pseudo-organized shelf. It's going right beside The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, which came, I think, just a little bit later than this one, and right beside Brad Smith's Tools and Weapons, which is really a tech policy Bible, which I have read. It's one of the few I have read.
So I'm at the Alex Long cocktail party. I'm gazing at your shelf. I'm like, This is a guy who's interested in real controversial solutions, even though he works for tech. He's not
Yeah,
afraid. He's not afraid to take on the deep ideas at the time.
absolutely. Absolutely. We have to really know what's in the zeitgeist. As you know, Robin, when you're in this field, you got to know what's going on out there in order to really interact with people you agree with, people you disagree with.
And
So,
I see the little bookmark poking up. It's at page 90. I'm like,
exactly. Exactly. You can see just how far that represents in this book. It looks like far fewer than 90 pages.
so that's a problem. I feel like
Yeah,
90 long books need to fix that. You need to be allowed to
exactly.
have like a bookmark that says, hey, I've read 90.
Yeah, or put all the footnotes at the beginning of the book so you can you're kind of like halfway through the book when you're just getting started. That's an idea.
Now, in these beautiful relationships that we have with books, where are you on the spectrum of this in terms of X's? Do you think you're going to maybe meet another time and get in with each other, or is it just going to sit there forever and you're walking away and you are happy with what you had? Where are you feeling right now?
Yeah, definitely the latter. Extremely unlikely that I'd read more than a page or two, and even like unlikely that I would do that at this point in this book. It served its purpose. I know the gist. I'm well beyond any aspiration of trying to become anything close to an economics expert. So I think it served its beautiful purpose. And now that you and I have had this discussion, Robin, I feel like our listeners, as well as you and I, are just much more comfortable.
Yeah, I think on my end, I think I'm going to read Short History of Equality. That could be a good next unread book.
Are you going to really go out and buy that book, Robin?
You know, I will. I will buy it. I will buy it drunk.
Unreal.
A Kindle will trick me into buying it, and I'll wake up the next day, and there it'll be. I just read. I did that with Christopher Marlowe's Jew of Malta. I read an audiobook about Christopher Marlowe, and in a moment of
Mm-hmm.
weakness, Jew of Malta just appeared in my Kindle the next morning, like some woman I've never
Oh my
met in
God.
the bed next to me. I was like, how did this end up here? What was I drinking last night?
Well, there are worse purchases that a person can make, so don't feel
So
too bad about it.
But I really like the guy. Nothing that I have done in the research for this has given me anything other than wanting to stay more in touch with him and pay a little bit more attention to him, because I find him a very soothing intellectual presence. I find his accent quite intolerable, but I find people reacting to his ideas great, and I love the expanse of his brain. So
Yeah,
I think the occasional PDF, the occasional foreign affairs review, I'm going to be keeping tabs. I'm going to be checking out his
good on you.
Instagram. Let's put it that way.
Well, now you've piqued my interest. If he has an Instagram, I'll be happy to follow him. I just started following Werner Herzog, and that was one of the best decisions I've
He's the
made in a long
best.
time. So,
He's the best.
yeah.
It is great. There's a book that I'm going to finish because it is just 50 pages long, but it is so good. It is the book he wrote when his friend was dying in Paris, and
Mm-hmm.
he decided that he had the solution for this, which
What's it
was
called?
on Breaking Through Ice. I actually shared you a quote from it on our group chat.
My
He
goodness.
decided that the only way to keep her alive was to walk from Germany to Paris to see her. And this is the diary of it.
I
By
love that.
page 3, it is December. He has broken into someone's holiday cottage, slept rough on their bed. And I don't know why. I don't know why there wasn't a toilet. He needs to pee, so he just pees in their Wellington boot.
Oh my God,
And
that's
and
terrible.
it's all conveyed in Werner Herzog, very sort of closed kind of like nonsense. And of course there are things where he's like, on the road, I follow a woman for 30 meters behind. She's looking over her shoulder at me. She is suspicious. I follow her. It is
He's such a
everything you
trip.
want.
He's such a trip. I see it right now on of Walking in Ice.
It's
Maybe,
great.
but maybe you read it in the original German, and the title was a little different.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Um, Alex, thank you so much for sharing this unread
Robin, this
book with
was a
us.
pleasure, and you've edified me significantly,
All right.
for which I'm grateful.
Can I you get to pick from our list what the next one is going to be.
Yeah, I'm excited to let you know that we're gonna focus next week on The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shire. So we're gonna go from one lighthearted topic to the next.
This is it. Do you know anything about this book?
I know a little bit about it. I know of it. I haven't read it, but I recently read an excellent book called Takeover by Ryback, which is about the rise, but not the fall of the Third Reich. So I've got at least the first the first part of the history, I think.
Well, great. I'm about, you know, about 90 pages into it from a similarly long point
Ooh.
of view. So, I can't wait for you to read around it a little bit, do a little bit of
Yeah.
research. I think one of the things that you'll enjoy is finding out about William Shirer. He's a really fun guy to hang out with.
I can't wait.
Alex, and everyone who's listening, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Robin.
I'm just looking forward to the next episode. And everyone, please keep on talking about those books you haven't read.
Keep it up. Share
let
some
people
stories
know,
with us.
And let people know as you forcefully have an opinion about a book that is based off very little. Because that very little is still precious. It's still precious.
It's probably more than the other person you're talking to.
It's more than nothing, even if it's less than everything.
There we go. That's the slogan. Thanks, Robin.
All right, bye.